Hey YouTubers, I thought I would make a video on my first guitar body, which is here. I didn't want to make a video showing me making the holes with the router and so forth, because I think that's not very informative. I wanted to make a video that gave you an explanation of what I used, what tools I used, the templates, the process, and most importantly what mistakes I made or almost made while I was making this body. So that way, if anyone out there wants to make one for the first time, they can use this video as a guide. Okay, so first off, what I want to just explain is that this is all about making the body. I did not make the neck. To make a neck you need a lot of things, including some specialised tools. I'm not going to make 100 guitars in my lifetime, I might make 3 or 4. I really want just to focus on the body, and that's all this video is going to be about. So let's get started. The first thing you really need to do is just decide what you're going to do, what shape you're going to make. I stuck with a simple Les Paul design. So heaps of these are on the internet, so you can just go out and just download them. Word of advice, when you print this out, make sure it's actual size, not fit to page, because you want it to be to scale. You're going to use this mostly as a reference, but also as the template when you route out the body. I printed this out at some place that prints things for a couple of bucks. I glued it with some PVA glue. Just water down the glue a little bit with some water so you can paint it on. And you can see that's just a piece of ply. Now, make sure the ply is at least 9mm thick. You don't need it too thick, but 9 is a good firm piece of wood. So when you've got your router bit over here, as you can see, I don't know if you can see that, the bearing sits across here. So, and this is on the piece of wood, and it comes through. And then what you can do, once you go down a certain amount, well then you don't need the template, because then the bearing will come across and guide you on the actual shape of the guitar, like this, to go the rest of the way through. The router bit you can actually just buy online. I bought a set of 3 for like 16 bucks. They're made overseas from China, but look, they work fine and they're still sharp, and you know, like unless you're doing a hell of a lot of routing, if you want to buy quality bits, they're going to be a lot more expensive. Like I said, $16 is not much for the 3 bits, and that's all I needed to use. Now let's talk about the wood. Now this is, I had this a very long time ago, and it was about 42mm dressed and square, so it was obviously a big square piece of wood. And it's a maple, it's a red maple I think, or it looks red to me anyway. It is a harder wood, and it's a quality wood most importantly. If you're going to make a guitar body, if you don't choose a good piece of wood, a quality piece of wood, I don't care how expensive the electronics are, it's going to sound pretty ordinary. The wood is very, very important. I recommend sourcing a nice piece of timber and going from there. Get it all dressed and flattened and everything. Make sure it's seasoned as well. I had this wood for a very long time, so it got seasoned in the garage. If you don't season it, what can happen? It can warp, or as moisture tries to escape, it may even crack. That's never going to happen with this. So the first thing I did was I put the template on there. I screwed it where the humbucker and the neck would be, because I knew I'd route those out. And I got my router bit and I went round, and then I dropped it down and finished it off. If you can get a router bit that's actually 50mm long with a bearing, which you can get, probably around 40 bucks for a quality one, or you can just do it all in one go. Before you router, cut the shape out with a jigsaw. So basically, or a bandsaw if you've got one, just cut it round about a good ½ centimetre away from the edge, and then you router the rest. Now when you router, don't try to take it all off in one go. Just do it in nice stages, because if you try to go too aggressively with a router, what can happen is you can chip things. And if you take a chunk out, well then it's just going to be more work for you to fix. So it's all about patience, and let the bit kind of ease its way. And make sure like you follow the grain as well, because sometimes if you're going against the grain, you can actually kind of cut into the wood the wrong way and actually get divots. I didn't have any of that. I just took my time and went around it really well, but I did have other problems. Okay, so what did I do after that? Well, the shape was done, so I went and did the neck, and that was my biggest mistake. I was mentally fatigued, and I didn't concentrate, and I completely botched it up. Let me show you the neck. So this is the neck. It was $40. It's a maple neck, dark rosewood, fender style, all pre-drilled. It's perfect. There's nothing wrong with it. It's exactly what I wanted. In fact, for $40, it was perfect. So what you do is with the neck is you get a piece of timber like this. I used craft wood because it's easier to cut and also shape, and the neck actually fits in there. So basically you just lay it down, trace around it with a pencil, cut it with a jigsaw, and then you kind of sand it to the line. I have little drum sanders that fit in my drill press. I bought them online, and they make life easy, especially when you are doing around the thing. You just put it on the drum sander and you work your way around. If you don't have the drum sander, which you can get on eBay, it's just going to take longer and you're going to do it by hand. But drum sanders are a time saver. Okay, so this is what happened. I stuffed up the neck big time. As you can see, that's the top of the guitar. When this happened, I was absolutely devastated because I basically completely just stuffed it up. The template I made for this wasn't very good. I rushed it. I was not concentrating. And as a result, I didn't do it correctly, and this was not right, and I just stopped, and I thought, great, I just completely screwed everything up. A good thing to do is just take your time when you do everything. If you feel tired, like just measure out what you need to do, and then if you're too tired to start cutting and it's too late, just don't. Just do it the next day. Because the thing is, like, this was a major mistake, and the biggest regret is that this particular body, as you can see, even though I fixed it, you can see the join. But the problem is, and I'll put photos in, is when I was sanding this the other day, I wet it, and as when you wet it, it looks like you varnished it. It really shows the grain. It's a good way of seeing what it's going to look like if you decide to varnish it. But the one thing I noticed was that the line was so visible. And it's a shame because now plan B is to paint it, and we'll get to that anyway. Going forward, if I was doing this again, I would not cut the shape of the guitar out first. I would do the neck first. If you do the neck first, then you can shape the guitar around the neck, because you've got to line that neck up correctly, because if it's off even by 1 degree, it's going to, it's going to come down on the guitar slightly off. You need everything to line up really, really well. If you do the neck first, then what you do is you put the neck on and you draw lines either side of the neck. You find the center, and then you just use that as the center, and then you can make your shape around the center mark and have everything symmetrical. I went back to front, and that was my mistake, but it still worked out really well at the end, even though I did make that mistake. With the humbucker, all I did was, I had another printout of that thing, of the template, and basically I stuck that on, I cut it out, placed that on the guitar body, and routed it out. You can see there's a center line I've done there. I made sure that it was perfectly square. You've got to make sure that everything's square, because if it's a little bit off, nothing's going to line up. So, and the way I do that is I actually put the neck in. So to show you, the neck will actually sits in the guitar. So the neck actually sits in the guitar like this. Okay, so there you go. You can see how snug that is. Okay, you can see, have a look at that. Okay, so it's really, it takes shape. So that's why it's really important to to make sure that you get that neck right, because if you don't have a really good fit with the neck, you know, everything else is just going to be a disaster. When you do the humbucker, make sure the neck's in. You've drawn lines either side with a straight ruler. I found the center your template in there. One thing I recommend, always test your template out on a scrap piece of wood. I did that for the neck the second time around, and also the humbucker, because if you make a mistake on the body, that's it. Take the time to do that. Some good tools to have are Forstner bits, but they're good to take out most of the wood for the humbucker space, and then you just router out the end. Okay, so after I did the neck and the humbucker, I did the holes here for the tail piece. Now I bought all my parts online. There's my tail piece here, and I've got obviously it's the Tune-O-Matic bridge as well that goes with it. I haven't done the holes for that. I will do that near the end, because what I want to do is I want to put the tail piece on, the neck on, put strings across, and then I can position the bridge on an angle exactly where it's supposed to go. That's the way I want to do it, because I don't want to pre-drill the holes and find out it's off by a little bit and the strings aren't sitting right. If your strings aren't sitting right on that bridge, again, that's not going to be very correctable, because the bridge doesn't move left and right. It only goes up and down for adjustments for the height. I wanted to show you these. Now, one of the hardest things was to try to make sure I got the hole right for this. Now this is where the tail piece sits in. You hammer that in. This ended up being 11 millimeters. So I had to get a drill bit that was 11 millimeters to actually drill that out. Again, I did it on a scrap piece of wood, hammered it in, made sure it was correct and it was nice and taut, and then I knew that that was the right hole. Same with the pods here. Same with the pods. I'd measure the thread and basically make sure I knew what size hole. So now with the pods, so as you can see, I decided to position them here and here. So I basically used that guitar behind me, which is my my Ibanez, which is a great guitar for $500. I basically just used that as a bit of a guide, because that's got, even though it's got two humbuckers, it's just got tone and volume. So I made a decision where I'd put them, drilled the hole straight through, and then on the other side, I kind of just made a cavity at this stage for the two pods. I don't know if I need to open that cavity up a little bit more or not, but at this stage, I'm just going to wait, because what I'm doing next is I'm waiting for some very long drill bits, because I need to drill a hole down the bottom here for the humbucker, and it's going to go down here and it's going to come out on the back here of the cavity, because the wiring for the humbucker is on the bottom right hand side, because there's only one way it can be, because if you turn it the wrong way, the wire's going to come out this way. So there's only one way the humbucker could be, and it's right on the corner. So what you can do is you drill with a very long drill straight through and come out the back. The jack will be somewhere down the bottom here, and again that's pretty much a hole straight through there. So the only other hole that is probably one of the most important holes is to get the tail piece drilled through to the cavity in the back. And so basically I'll drill through the cavity and it'll come out the tail piece. Now that's because you've got to ground the guitar. Now if you don't do that, when you plug the guitar in, it will hum, because the strings and the tail piece won't be grounded. So what you'll do in that hole is you'll pass some wire through that's exposed, and when you hammer in the little lug, it will touch the exposed wire. So that's something I need to do, and that way it's all grounded, and that wire will be grounded to the pod. I bought just a whole Gibson style pack that had 4 pods and wire and a switch and everything. Obviously I only need 2 pods, no switch, and just the wire. It also has the jack in there as well, but I bought a separate jack anyway that has a chrome plate on it. Because when you take on a project like this, you're not going to knock it over in one day. So you think about it and you think, okay, you visualise in your mind what you're going to do, what's next, the neck, the best way of doing it, and so forth. The actual guitar's been sanded, and I did use some filler in a couple little places. There was a little nick over here which really annoyed me because I must have put something heavy on the edge. So you know, if you're making a guitar out of a nice piece of wood and you're planning on varnishing it, I warn you now, you're going to have to sand it really well with fine to get all the scratches, because any little marks will just show up. And even though this is on the harder side of the wood, you know, you can ding it quite easily. You know, you've got chisels floating around or anything heavy like that. Like, it doesn't take much, you can bang it anywhere. So you know, it's like I'm protecting this so well right now. Like I said, this is where I'm at after about 3-4 weeks now. Doing a little bit at a time, some on the weekends. I'm really looking forward to finishing it off, painting it, and then plugging it in and just see how it sounds. Just one last thing before I move on. I just wanted to show you this, that's the humbucker I chose, which is a Tone Rider. It's a bridge pickup. Just make sure that if you are going to put one humbucker, you get a bridge pickup. I'll be curious to see what it sounds like. I've seen some videos. I did a lot of research on YouTube before I bought a humbucker and so forth. Okay, it's been a few weeks since I did the first part of this video, and I'm a lot further along now. In fact, I'm just at that stage where I'm going to give the body to somebody next week to paint. So let me just show you what it looks like at the moment. So that's the front, bolts of the neck on. The humbucker is not screwed in, and that's the back. The first thing I did was actually work on the cavity here. What I needed to do was to drill a hole, and I will show you by taking out the humbucker. As you can see, it comes out. Alright, drill a hole down here, I don't know if you can see it very well, and let it come out the back here. Once it came out, it actually came out up the top here somewhere. And then I opened up this cavity more with the router. Now once that was done, I then wanted to do the cavity plate. So what I actually did is I found some Perspex, and I made the shape based on what I wanted to do. And then I drew the shape on a piece of MDF, as you can see. And when you do this, use MDF because it's really easy to sand. This needs to be identical to this, so use a fine black pen. You can see the lines, and just take your time when you cut it out. I use a drum sander, like I said, on a drill, and I basically just slowly work towards the line, making sure I get it nice and accurate. Then what I did, actually got another piece of MDF, and I used the router to test it. You can see where it's actually going to just sit in like that. And I'm obviously going to screw it in, and that's also going to be painted as well. It's not going to remain clear Perspex. So that's going to go to the painter as well. Don't spend a fortune, but I got this whole set here for around $16 on eBay, and these last two small drills is what I used to actually do the hole. So basically I just aimed the drill bit, aimed it towards this hole right here. I got it as shallow angle as I could. After that, I did the neck. What I did with the neck was I clamped it all together with a clamp where I wanted the plate to sit and so forth, and then I just literally just marked out the holes. Actually, I drilled them with the clamp on, with the plate on there. So basically, I drilled pilot holes in there, and the holes through the timber themselves here, the guitar body, are big enough, just big enough for the screw to slide through. But the holes into the neck actually a couple of mils smaller, so they can actually grab the neck and pull it towards the body. So you don't want the holes on the body to be small. You want them to be big enough for the screw to actually fit through. Other thing is, just make sure that the screw isn't going to protrude past your get onto your rose board, because you could probably push it out and wreck it. I checked that, and they're just the right length. Now with when you're doing things like the cavity and things like that, just make sure that the template's correct. You've tested the template. I mean, you don't want you're really doing it just to make sure the shape's right and also the depth is right, so it fits in there. You don't want to get it wrong. You want to get it right the first time, because otherwise what will happen is that you just, there's a lot of work up until that point, so just make sure you take your time. Okay, the jack. The jack wasn't overly difficult to do. What I basically did, you need to do a hole quite large because it's got to fit the whole mechanism in there. But I just chose a spot where I think would be comfortable. Most guitars have them around there, some have them on the back, but obviously because of the way my cavity is, so the hole itself, I don't know if you'll be able to see it anyway, is large enough to fit the whole mechanism in there. And then so what I did is I drilled it out, it's about 20 mil, and then I basically then put the plate on there. The plate was curved already, but it was a little bit too curved for this guitar, so I actually had to just kind of put it in a vise and kind of make it a little bit flatter. But at the end of the day, I just placed it on there once the hole's done, and it sat in the center, and then I drilled the small little pilot holes. With all your drilling, before you drill into the guitar, whether it's the holes for anything that you do, drill them in a piece of pine and make sure that the hole is the right size for your screws. If you get it wrong on the guitar, you're going to be using filler and wasting a lot of time, and you're not going to be happy with yourself. Okay, let's talk about the humbucker. Now, when I did this, as you can see, I've assembled it. It's basically, we've got the plate with the 2 screws and the springs. And now, the whole idea, and you guys may know this already, but it's so when you screw these 2 screws, you can raise it or lower it. So the important thing is to make sure that that cavity, when the humbucker sits in there, it's not snug where it's actually rubbing anywhere. It's just got a little bit of breathing space, so it kind of almost floats. What I did today actually was, with the chisel, I just made sure I chiseled little areas where maybe the little tabs were touching, drilled holes a little bit deeper. In fact, have a bit of a look, seeing the cavity there, I don't know if you can see, but there's a hole there and there, and that allows for the screw. The screw is 1 inch long. I'm talking about these screws here. So they've got room to go all the way down. So the other hole I did was, it came through the cavity and it came out to the tailpiece. So if I push something through from the cavity, you can see a wire come through there, whatever. I'm going to actually use that to actually ground everything from the tailpiece. Apparently the guitars in the 70s weren't grounded. So okay, the body's come back from the painters. And this is what I call a white metallic. It's basically the whitest white you can get, and then you put, Warren put a couple of coats of metallic over it, and a lot of cars call this pearl. There are different types of whites though, so Warren explained some whites have a bit of yellow in them, some have a bit of black, and it makes them look kind of yellowish or grey under when you contrast them against a pure white. You're never going to get a pure white if you put a metallic over it. But yeah, it turned out really good. When I first saw it, I was a little bit worried because it looked yellow, and it was only because it was reflecting the room's colours, and the light was yellow. So, but once you get it out into the open, it looks, I don't know what it's going to look like on camera, but I've got to tell you, he's done a really, really good job. And so yeah, I'm going to move on now. I got a tip from someone not to glue the neck in. If I need to make an adjustment on the neck at all, well, then I'll be screwed if I glue the neck in. So, like, this is where we're at the moment, and you know, it's a very nice job. If you look at it, like, there's no imperfections or nothing, and it's come up really, really good, and it's shiny, and with the chrome on it, it's going to look amazing. Okay, so I did a couple of things, and I just wanted to show the progress of what I did just over the last couple of hours. I bolted the neck in, and I also put the tuning pegs on. With the tuning pegs, bolt them on first, not too firm, but just firm enough so they don't move. Make sure they're all lined up. It's pretty easy to do, but you just got to make sure you know, maybe use something straight to see that they line up pretty straight, or just kind of hold it from a distance to make sure that the pegs all look kind of nice and straight. once you're confident in that, I just drilled straight in there. I was very careful not to punch through the neck. It was a 1.5 mil drill bit. I tested it on another bit of wood before I drilled, of course. Like I said, always test drill bits, make sure that you're not going to make the hole too big and create headaches for yourself. As I mentioned earlier, I did not glue the neck in, I just bolted it in, and believe me, it's not going to move. I can feel it. I also just checked. What I did is I put the screws through before I put the neck on and pushed them through, just to make sure that they didn't get protrude, because this is a custom made body, so it's not like it's a factory template that's been tried and tested over the years. Everything's custom here, so I made sure those bolts aren't going to protrude through and push my rosewood out, and they don't. So I was confident when I was doing them by hand that they weren't going to come through or wreck the neck. This is really solid. I've got to tell you, it's difficult to explain it through the lens, but this is quite solid. I don't think it's also a little bit smaller than the guitar behind me, which I'm really looking forward to playing it. The neck's smaller because it's a Stratocaster neck, so it should be, or a Fender neck I should say. But look, it'll be nice to see how it will go. Anyway, what I'm going to do now, I'm going to put the lugs in here. They're in the freezer. The reason you put the metal in the freezer is because it shrinks just enough that maybe it's easier to punch through. And when I punch those through, I'll be able to put the bridge on. But I'm going to do the wiring next, and then we'll do a follow up on that, because that is the main thing to do now. But yeah, I'm glad I chose a dark rosewood too, because it goes really well. And now as it's coming together, the white really pops, and with all the chrome. But yeah, this is quite strong. I spent a couple of hours this morning doing a couple of things on the guitar, and I just thought I'd stop and just go through the things I did. This is where we're at now. So as you can see, the tailpiece, the humbucker screwed in, the jack, and the wiring's just sitting there. That's what it will be like. And obviously you can put a bridge between the humbucker and the tailpiece, which I plan to do. Alright, so I want to talk to you about three important things. First of all, this particular lug right here. This is where it's actually grounded through. I've got a wire. It's very hard to see in there. It's all messy at the moment. It's all just taped down. But I'll tell you what I did. I ended up getting a wire that's about 10 centimeters longer than I needed to, and I stripped the wire there, and I wrapped it around a very thin screwdriver, made it like a little spring, and I put a little bit of solder on there too, so just to kind of keep it a little bit solid. And I threaded it through the hole, and then the spring part just kind of sat down the bottom there. So when you actually hammer the lug in, it eventually touches it. I'll tell you what happened was, when I was hammering the first lug here, I felt a little bit of tension, too much tension to my liking, and I stopped and I took the lug out. And then I realised what it was just the paint. So, because when the guitar got painted, paint went around the rim. So it wasn't that the guitar shrank or the hole wasn't correct. It just needed to be re-drilled out. So things like that can affect, you know, what you've planned to do. So just keep in mind of that. You might have to drill your holes out just lightly after the paint job. After I did that, I did the jack. Now I soldered 2 wires to the jack. You've got your ground and your live. Then you just push it through and then just screw it in. After I did that, the last thing I just did was I put the humbucker in. So that's all ready to go as well. So what I did with that is basically I just make sure that it's nice and square to the bridge. So it all lines up. You can see how nice the chrome starting to look against the white. This guitar's looking whiter and whiter every day. It's just ridiculous. And it's only picked it up yesterday. So I wired up the guitar, and it took me a little while to do it. Does it work? I'm not sure, but I know that it's been verified. I'm not 100% pleased with it all, but only because I just found it really difficult to solder. I'll just show you. Look, everything is in its correct spot, so it should work. I'm going to string it up, and we'll see how we go. I'm going to put the strings, the two outer strings, and just with the two outer strings on, what I'll do is I'll put the bridge underneath and line it up. You really need to be careful. I cover the guitar with towels, and you just need to just follow the diagram and use a magnifying glass and make sure that you watch where the solder is touching, because the whole thing gets hot. But like I said, I'm not an expert in soldering, but I managed to get it done. It looks a little bit like a dog's breakfast, but I put a string on it, just the one, and I put the knobs. The knobs are the ones with a little screw on the side, and the pots are the ones where it's a push-on knob, so they're not really suited. So I've got to find the chrome knobs that suit those pots rather than changing the pots. Just thought I'd mention it. Now, the reason I'm making this little part of the video is because I didn't want to cheat. It didn't work. I've plugged it in. It's not the amp. I checked out the other guitar. It's not working. It's dead. I need to work out what's wrong with the wiring. Okay, so I've actually put the guitar together, and it works at the moment, and I'm just going to talk about a few things, and then this is what it looks like at the moment. The bridge is on, as you can see, it's strung. I even put a string guide, it's actually called. Everything's great, except for one thing, but I'm going to talk about that. So, why wasn't it working? It wasn't working because it was shorting out. The wiring I did, even though it was correct, in essence, it was actually, things were touching that shouldn't be touching, and that particular wire had a sheath on it that was metal, which is used for grounding. So it's kind of like two wires in one. I had no idea about this, and I got told by a guy I took it to locally, Dave. I'll put his details on the description there if anyone's on the Central Coast. He's a guitar Lutheran. He obviously does all the electricals and everything. And I took it to him, and for a small fee he basically fixed everything up, and it wasn't that wrong. It's just that he basically just explained what was going on, and then he just resoldered a few things and neatened everything up and plugged it in, and yeah, everything was sweet. So I got that out the way, and I took it home, but while I was there he explained a couple of things to me, and things that never really occurred to me, and they're quite important. I wasn't going to put a bridge on originally, as I mentioned, because I thought, well, I'll put it on if I think I need it. Apparently I do need it. The thing is, there's a scale length on a guitar from the nut to the bridge, and the halfway point will always be the 12th fret. So the distance between your nut here and your 12th fret, your 12th fret's over here, has to be the same distance between the 12th fret and the bridge. So if I don't put a bridge on there, it won't be able to be tuned properly. So in other words, even though I may get, you know, the strings to sound correctly, once you hit the different notes on the guitar, it won't work because it'll be out of scale, and there's a mathematical equation behind all this. So you need to abide by it, otherwise you're not going to make a great sounding instrument. So I put the bridge on, and I measured basically from the nut to the 12th fret and made sure that the distance was correct. I do have a little bit of leeway with this bridge because you can go back and forth just a little bit, but it's pretty spot on. When I did the bridge, all I did was put two strings, the two outer strings on there, and I lined it up, and I put some tape on the guitar as well. And then what I did is put the holes where the bridge kind of slots on. If that's the bridge, this is the bridge, sorry. Because in fact, actually I held the bridge down when I was happy with the position and everything, made sure it was all straight, and I actually drilled down just a little bit just for starters, and then I took the two dummy strings off and everything, and I basically just drilled that hole bigger and bigger and bigger, just through a series of drill bits that got bigger and bigger till I got to the 12mm where the lug sits in. Once the bridge was on, Dave warned me about the action. So the problem is now, the only problem is that needs fixing, unfortunately, is the strings are very far away from the board. Now that is because this is a Les Paul design. Normally with your necks on Les Pauls, like that one behind me, you'll notice that the neck kind of bends back. So you've got your body and your neck bending back. So the strings will bend down, but so will the neck, and that's where you get the action can be even right across. Now my neck is completely flat because I've used a Fender style neck on a Les Paul design. The problem with that is the action. So, you know, I had beautiful action before I put the bridge in, but if I don't put the bridge in, it's going to be a paperweight. I'm really happy with it. It does play. It does stay in tune, but you can't really play it because the action is too high. So I have to fix that. Hey, okay, so this is going to be the final video. The guitar is officially finished. I've actually been playing it for the last few days. Okay, so I'll just go through quickly a couple of things that I did just to finish it off, and we'll go from there. Okay, so the inclination of the neck, if you have a bit of a look, you can see that it's ever so slightly inclined back. I was actually quite surprised. The actual height of the little wedge that I made that goes between the neck and the body didn't need to be that big. In fact, it was just under 2mm. The reason for that is because you know, you're not really raising the neck up 6mm so you can get a 2mm action, because it was about 8mm above the fretboard. It was more of a tilting action, so because as one end's going up, the other end's going down, so it's a little bit deceiving. But so yeah, when I first made the wedge, I had to then just keep reducing that wedge down. In fact, the wedge can still be reduced even more because I needed to raise the bridge up so I can get a good action, and the tailpiece even a little bit as well, because I didn't want too much stress on this part of the strings. If I ever change the strings in the future, I may take the neck off and reduce it if I want, but look, if it's not broke, don't fix it. After a couple of days, I noticed there was buzzing down this end of the neck. So basically, just, you know, you hold your finger down and you yeah, try to make sure you can't hear any buzzing, especially if I've been trying to play in blues. I'm not very good just yet. I've been practicing. A few people give me some ideas. I've watched a lot of videos. So I'm not going to be shredding on this guitar in the next 2 minutes, trust me. So basically, yeah, after I did that, before I restrung it again, I got lemon oil. Lemon oil is this, it was only $10. What you do is you just put it on the fretboard and just wipe it in, it soaks it in, just wipe it off. It's good to do that once every few months, or on every string change, because you get impurities from your fingers on the board. The knobs arrived as well, these infamous push-on knobs. Again, they were chrome, so everything works out well. The other adjustments I made, just made sure that the humbucker was raised up close to the strings. You know, there wasn't really anything else to do. Once it was all put together, for the last few days, I've basically been just practicing, and it was just scales. I've got a little orange practice amp, and you know, I'll flick on the gain on that, and I'll try a few little things, but I'm basically in just kind of beginner mode still, because even though I had lessons as a kid, I never stuck with it. And you know, it's good that, you know, I've gotten back into it. In fact, there's so much out there on YouTube, and there's plenty of people out there teaching you just some good basics to start. And even the guy at the guitar shop, who was really nice, he says to me, look, you know, just play the blues scale and you'll get really good at it. And I'll play the blues scale. I don't know like how good it's going to be, because in front of the camera I'm going to probably choke, but we'll see how we go anyway. But just before I play anything, just I've got a little bit of reverb, I think, going. No, I've got no reverb on, sorry. Just on a clean channel, there's nothing really gun building on that. It's incredible, like with just these two little scales, people can just sit there for, you know, for 20 minutes and just be playing like blues, and they're just circling around these areas. So, but back on the actual construction of the guitar, I just want to just finally say that hopefully people that watch got something out of it. Like I said, I didn't want to spend a lot of time in the workshop showing you how to make holes with a router and things like that. I wanted just to talk about the logistics behind it, and just to, you know, measure twice, cut once, you know, check your drill bit on scrap bits of wood. Think about, you know, your plan of the guitar. You know, like I said, I had a few headaches, but everything worked out really well. And I have to tell you, I bought a RP360, and it's a Digitech, and what it is, it's a multi-effects, a wide range of effects, you know, whether you like kind of AC/DC, Whitesnake, or Queen, or blues. I'm going to put it onto the dirty channel for a sec, so you can just hear. So Star Is Born that came out recently, and the very beginning, that just that opening riff of Black Eyes. I'm going to try to do it, see if give you an idea of the sound of the guitar. Into the song, which again I haven't practiced the whole thing, just that little bit of a riff there, just to get used to my hands. So this is it. That's what I got out of a few months of back and forth. Shout out to anyone who helped me: Warren for painting the guitar, Dave who helped me with the wiring, and just, you know, took the time to actually explain to me I need the bridge and otherwise it's not going to work, and the inclination of the neck. Leave comments, and that's it. Bye bye.